Hey, and welcome to Finlos Lives. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully, I'm going to put together something engaging for you, something that might challenge your ideas or way of thinking about the topic that we're going to be discussing today. And that is the idea of irreversible change. The way that I like to think about it, or the way that I like to phrase it, is that there is no going back. I know that this is something that I've struggled with at various times in my life, but I've really changed my way of thinking about reconsidering decisions that I've made, or really spending a lot of time about that tricky moment of wishing that I could have or would have or should have done something differently. So that's what we're going to be digging into today. Changing outcomes, or actually our inability to change outcomes, but yet this desire that I think that we have, that we experience in lots of different ways, that we find ways to sort of explore the concept or alleviate some of that pressure through the media that we consume, whether that be through films or through various kinds of stories or music. But just this idea of permanence, that we are experiencing time in one direction and there really is no going back. So again, thank you so much for joining me, and let's get into it. So there's some philosophy to this, obviously. There are various concepts of time, that we live in a causal universe, that time is basically like a series of dominoes. At some infinite point in the past, the universe began, and since that moment of creation, or that moment of the start, if there is such a thing, time has always been moving in one direction, and that is forward. And generally speaking, that's the consensus on how we as humans experience time, in that one direction. There's lots of different philosophies or way of thinking about time. That if you want to take the Kurt Vonnegut route, where time was created and is both infinite in all directions, and yet everything that has happened or will happen has all already happened and is happening all at the same time. Again, I don't want to get too much into the philosophy of time in that regard, where I really just want to dig into it in sort of the one direction. We were born at X day and time on this year, and since that moment, we have experienced the things in our lives in a sequence, one after the other. It's that sequencing, that one directionality of time, that really poses some challenges for us. So there's the philosophical aspect of it, of grappling with this sort of insurmountable reality of the clock ticking, right? That we can't stop it. But then there's also this really personal, much more intimate experience of time, and that is the experience of doing things or experiencing things that we wish we could change. I know that I have those moments, those experiences, those things that we often express as regrets, that I wish that I could go back and make a different choice, or I wish I could have reconsidered what I said or what I did to have a different outcome, to make things turn out differently than they did, so that way the people involved, including myself, including the people that I care about, didn't have to experience some sort of discomfort or pain. And that's a really challenging, really complicated feeling to have. I think it's a real struggle that I suspect that most people deal with. And so I'm gonna try to unravel some of the reasons why we often cling to the past, and instead of embracing the consistency of the impermanence, right? The reality that things are gonna change no matter what. All of these things have deep emotional impacts on us, as things are constantly shifting. And And I think that we really should try to thrive in that sort of insecurity, that we should be able to, or I would hope that we can learn to find ways to thrive in the lack of certainty, because we don't know the outcome, which means that we always have a chance to get to where we want to be. So what exactly am I talking about here when I say that there is no going back? Philosophers have been asking this question forever, right? What is time? How do we experience time? What does it all mean? And so a common phrase that often gets used is this idea of the arrow of time, that we measure from one point that moves towards the next point, and it's moving in one direction. That's generally how we think of time. It's basically we think of it as a fundamental law of the universe. And this is not resignation. It's not just a giving up against something that's insurmountable. Like, we can't stop time, yes, but we need to instead align ourselves with the reality of the flow of time instead of resisting. And I think it's helpful to think about this in different levels, because I think if we can begin to align ourselves at the personal level with this constant flow, that we can become better able to cope with the more overwhelming and daunting larger concepts of the flow of time. So, like, at the personal level, we have these big choices that we can make along the way, or things that we don't even necessarily have a choice about that occur, whether we're talking about relationships or partners or child rearing or professional choices. All of these things leave indelible marks on our experience that we can't undo. If we want to talk about the societal perspective, there are huge technological leaps like the internet, or like social media, or historical events like major wars. They are permanently and irreversibly shaping the way that we are existing. And we are constantly hearing politicians or even just everyday people saying we should go back to the way that things were, hoping or wishing or praying for that time when things were easier or simpler. And it's, yes, we can hope for that, or we can hope for a time when things are simple, but we can't go back to the way things were because it's impossible. And then, of course, there is the grander natural scale, when the universe functions under this universal concept of entropy, and that all systems are perpetually moving towards disorder. It's a scary, overwhelming sense of impending doom, that we have no control over anything, and yet a surrender to that lack of control can sometimes make the overwhelming, daunting, unrelenting sense of inevitability just feel almost graceful, almost as if it's a flow of things. And if we stop trying to resist that flow, instead we might enjoy it a little bit. Yeah, we get it, right? We get that time flows in one direction, and yet for some reason, for as long as there's been thinking people, there's also been a desire for a sort of an undo or a redo button, a way to go back to the way it was, or to make amends for that one thing that I wish I could have done differently. And of course, it's a very human response. It's not a weakness. It's natural to have that sense of regret or pain. And it really, I think, stems from a desire to have control over our lives, desire to have a sense that we can impact the flow of things around us. And we're constantly grappling with it. We're constantly grappling with these what if scenarios. unfortunately, I think that that's where people can get stuck, right? If we get fixated on the what ifs, or if the if onlys, what if I had done this, or what if I had done that? What if I had not said that hurtful thing, or what if I had not done that harmful thing? It's really, I don't know, hard. It's hard because it's a very easy thing to say, well, if I had known then what I know now, I would have done things differently. I mean, there are things that I know that I wish that I would not have done, but I also think that it's sort of a scary thought, and this is a little bit of a thread that I'm experiencing, but this is something that actually I experience quite frequently when I start engaging with these what ifs, is that I actually experience a little bit of panic, because I think about where would I be now if I hadn't made those choices. And I don't know if I would like the person that I would be, even though like I've caused some serious harm and some serious damage along the way. I really like to think that I've learned and I've grown through the process of dealing with the consequences of those decisions. And I don't know if the person that I would have been on some alternate timeline would be as well adapted as I am, assuming that I am adapted, right? That's my own perspective. But we replay these alternate realities in our mind. We construct fantasies of how things could have been. And it's easy to sort of endlessly rewind or edit these moments in our past, but then not actually doing anything about it right now, not actually making the changes in our lives right now that could prevent those mistakes and those moments and actions of harm doing from happening again. And also in the replaying and editing of those videos of our memories, we can actually alter the way that we remember things happening. And so both of these outcomes are really not ideal. Either the misremembering of things because we've sort of obsessed about it for so long that we've started to shift the way that we feel about it, or shift the way that we think about it, or the obsessing about those memories so that we lose track of the present. Neither of those things are really where we want to be, because the danger is that while we're stuck in that mental loop of what ifs and if onlys, we're actually losing sight of the present moment. Our energy, our focus, our emotional bandwidth gets completely consumed by a past that can't be changed, or a hypothetical future that might not ever come, because we're not busy, or we're avoiding the engagement of the present. We're physically here, but mentally we're still dwelling in the land of could haves or would haves or should have. And honestly, like, it's really, really a lonely place to be. And I think even more detrimental is that that's a really easy way to become stagnant, to lose the opportunity for growth and for change. And I think this really feeds a cultural obsession. I would go so far as to say that a cultural obsession, or at least a strong popularity, an intense popularity for stories about time travel, or about multiple realities, in movies and media and comic books, in novels, Back to the Future, Avengers, or Loki. All of these narratives are resonating because they tap into our this desire to correct mistakes, to have another chance, to have more than one chance, just to get the chance to do it right, and to experience a different outcome than the painful one that we're so regretful about. You know, we want to go back and unsay that hurtful word, or retry that missed opportunity. We want to have the opportunity, right, to have the pleasure and the luxury of experiencing multiple paths without the consequences of what each of those paths might actually mean. Or we just want to escape the current outcome or the current pain or the disappointment by imagining a reality where things turned out better and things turned out easier. And I think this desire for a redo button is deeply tied to an accountability avoidance, right? This fear and anxiety, or even an inability to acknowledge responsibility for the things that we do. If we could just go back in time and prevent a mistake, we wouldn't have to face the consequences. You wouldn't have to apologize. You wouldn't have to deal with the difficult conversations. And that is a really appealing thing for some people. That is a really appealing fantasy. That quest, that search for a quick fix, is inherent conflict avoidance. It means we're often unwilling to sit in the discomfort of our choices. We want to say, I'm sorry, and maybe try to make amends, but then have that relationship or our own conscience cleansed as if nothing happened. And this really avoids the lasting impact, the irreversible changes in trust or perception that often accompany real apologies and genuine forgiveness. And it's that shift in trust, the loss of trust, or the shift in perception that other people have towards us that really makes us uncomfortable. Because who doesn't want to feel trusted? Who doesn't want to be perceived as cool and awesome and kind and loving and all of those positive things? Really, it's a desire for consequence-free reconciliation, which honestly just isn't how life works. And really, if we're thinking about our opportunities for growth, this way of thinking, it stunts our ability to grow and adapt. If we never have to truly face the full weight of our past, we won't learn how to navigate the complex, messy reality of an irreversible present. This desire for instant resolution is a major reason why these time travel and alternate reality stories are so compelling. They're a fantasy where growth isn't necessary. We just exist with this perpetual clean slate. And yeah, that sounds awesome, but it also sounds, well, I shouldn't say it. It sounds awesome in theory. But again, it also sounds very stagnant. It sounds like a place where nobody changes, where there is no conflict. And if there's no conflict, there is no growth. There is no opportunity for change or for shifts of perspective or for truly coming to grips with the reality of a constantly changing world. And another way that we seek to reverse or mitigate the impact of irreversible change is by recreating situations of comfort from our past. We might return to old ways of doing things, or visit familiar places, listen to music from a specific era, eat foods that make us feel nostalgic, or even surround ourselves with familiar people. And of course, we do this because it makes things feel safer and more predictable. And it allows us to temporarily escape the unfamiliarity or the discomfort of things that are shifting around us. And while comfort is important, and these moments of seeking a shelter in the familiar is important and has a place, if we are perpetually existing in those nostalgic moments, it prevents us from fully engaging with the new realities that are constantly showing up in front of us. And again, we end up in these loops of stagnation where we're avoiding, where we're obsessing with the what ifs, and it is a real hindrance to growth. And some things that come up with this irreversible change, things that we can't control for, like we experience the powerful emotions of grief or loss. And even if what's lost is not a person, right? We can grieve the past. We can grieve the loss of a future that we had wished or hoped for. And it's absolutely important to acknowledge that pain. It is a form of grief just like any other, and that is valid. Of course, the unknown, what happens after the loss, can be terrifying. Because when we step on to new paths, we experience that anxiety and that fear of uncertainty. It's overwhelming. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know if we're going to be okay. And these are natural responses to navigating new and different and uncharted territory. It's something that we all feel. But yet we often find ourselves in a balance or a tug of war, resisting that change, desperately clinging to comfort and those moments in the past where we felt safe. But on the other side, that gradual, sometimes painful journey towards accepting the reality of the shifting present, of the perpetually moving time that we're in. But the more we resist, the more we prolong our own suffering. Of course, acceptance isn't really necessarily about always liking the changes that we experience, but it is about acknowledging the reality of change and allowing for the possibility that what can come from the change might be good. And amidst all of this discomfort, there's a powerful opportunity to find meaning, purpose in the face of change. I think that if we think about our lives, I know that when I think about my life, I've experienced the greatest growth or insight from those moments that were the most painful. And by moment, I mean experiences or periods of time. A moment sometimes can be a whole year, it feels like. But I think that those where we have our best lessons. I think those are our strongest experiences that could really give us the opportunity to reconsider and reshape who we are. Because we should always be growing and always be changing. And I think ultimately at the heart of this anxiety, perhaps the source of the anxiety is the unsettling truth of impermanence. Everything is constantly changing, moving, decaying, transforming. Nothing is permanent. And that's scary. That's scary. You know, we think about from the immediate things, the sunsets, and the laughter of our kids, a meal. These are beautiful moments precisely because they're transient, because we can't hold on to them. They feel so much more profound. We look at ourselves in the mirror and we see ourselves aging. The wrinkles, the graying hair, the aches and pains. Our physical forms are in a constant state of flux. And every moment of that transition is an opportunity to experience. Relationships are constantly changing. Friendships shift, family dynamics change, romantic relationships deepen, diverge, are rediscovered. The person who you knew a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago is not the same person that they are today, and neither are you. And because of those shifts in who we are as people, the relationship should shift with us, right? This is another one of those really trying hard to grapple or to grasp the past when we can remember how great things were at the beginning. They are just as great now. They're just different, or at least they could be just as great now, but in different ways because you're not the same people. And these regular encounters with impermanence, they all relate to, of course, the biggest irreversible change of all, which is our own mortality. That really, the heart of this is the knowledge that our time here is finite, and that, to be dramatic, every breath is one fewer that we're going to have, that we're not going to get back. And this is the often unspoken underlying fear that fuels our resistance to change. If everything is impermanent, then I too am impermanent. If I can't even go back and fix a small mistake, how can I control anything? Coming to terms with impermanence isn't really about morbidity. It's about a radical acceptance of reality. It's about recognizing that trying to hold on to what's fleeting is like trying to grasp water. It only slips through your fingers and ultimately leaves you exhausted. And when we think about this, and when we come to accept this, I know that I struggle with this. Like, I'm speaking as if I've got it all under control. I panic. I panic about this all the time. So this is me walking myself through the process as well. But when I shift my focus from trying to grasp these fleeting moments, to hold on to them, and instead engage with the preciousness of them and treating them gently and experiencing them while I can, it really makes them feel even better. And all of this is a way to adapt, right? I think that what I'm trying to get myself to is a place where, as the world is constantly shifting around me, as the impermanence of life makes itself known to me in every moment, that I am able to adapt to the changes as they come as best as I can. Never perfectly, but always with intention and with care. It's a type of resilience. And resilience isn't about avoiding pain. It's not about avoiding the strife. It's about how we recover, how we learn, how we strengthen ourselves from those things, learning from the setbacks, finding inner strength that we might not have known that we possessed. It's about knowing that even if changes come, that we have the capacity to adjust. And what I'm hoping is that when we are aware of these competing ideas, right? The idea of wanting to go back, the anxiety about the future of what's to come, as we accept them and as we allow them to enjoin around us, that they actually help us, those competing energies really help us to focus into the present moment, finding the joy in the now, appreciating the small moments for their transient beauty, and engaging fully with the reality that we currently occupy. Yeah, it's going to pass too, but it's beautiful while it's here. We have to reframe this narrative. The way that we tell the stories of our lives shape the way that we experience our lives. We have to reframe the way that we narrate our own experience. And so instead of seeing a loss or a change as only a devastating event. We can try to identify the unexpected opportunities for growth. We can try to embrace the potential for new connections. We can identify the strengths that we're finding in ourselves. And it's not about denying the pain of the moment, because it is there, but it is about finding something that is more empowering, maybe. Something that is more complex. Something that is more fulfilling. And as I wrap up today's conversation, remember that when I say that there's no going back, I'm not saying to forget the past. And instead, I want to try to acknowledge that I'm constantly moving forward. Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I hope that there was something interesting in here for you. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for this or future episodes, you can email me, finlos@finloslives.com. You can find me on social media. Or you can listen to this or any other of my episodes at finloslives.com. Please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player, and I look forward to our next conversation.